Bitcoin's price is exploding as it rips past 47K this morning. We saw massive ETF inflows yesterday, with the 9 new ETFs overtaking MicroStrategy with over 192,000 Bitcoin. Are we close to seeing the beginning of FOMO panic buying as Bitcoin approaches $50,000? Plus, the inverse Kramer strikes again as BlackRock and Fidelity become the two most successful ETF launches in the last 30 years. Bears are in disbelief right now. And the S&P 500 hits a new all-time high as Chinese investors pile into US ETFs at a premium of over 43%. Are they FOMOing into the Bitcoin ETFs too? Stay locked in. You're not going to want to miss this episode. Welcome to the Friday, February 9th edition of the Bitcoin ETF Daily Show. I'm Dante Cook, head of Swan Business. In this show, we discuss the latest news, events, winners, losers, and key information surrounding these historic Bitcoin ETFs. Here at Swan, we're on a mission to educate the world about Bitcoin. So please like this video and subscribe to the channel. This will help us to teach more people about Bitcoin and to help us break through the noise and reach more people on YouTube. Steph Curry was hotter than chicken grease last night, making his first 7 threes and finishing with 11 three-pointers made, the third most of his career. Like Steph Curry, the ETFs had their third best day of inflows ever at over 405 million. BlackRock was our inflows leader yesterday with 204 million in inflows, flipping Fidelity as the daily leader, who also had 128 million in inflows. ARK and Bitwise also had a strong showing, contributing over 86 million and $60 million to the total flow numbers yesterday alone. Look at how much Bitcoin that these ETFs have accumulated. Forget about the down days. Take a step back and look at this accumulation over time. Michael Saylor and MicroStrategy having the Bitcoin holdings lead was short-lived as the ETF issuers overtook MicroStrategy holding 192,262 Bitcoin compared to just 190,000 at MicroStrategy. BlackRock and Fidelity are the most successful ETF launches in the last 30 years. Both of them have more than $3 billion in assets under management. Thanks to EB Eric Balchunas for the chart. In another phenomenal inverse Kramer call, Jim Cramer called the Bitcoin ETF launches a disappointment on January 18th. And since then, the Bitcoin price has been up over 15%. As the bears continue in disbelief, over 90% of people who've purchased Bitcoin are in the profit. With Bitcoin's price now over $47,000, let's take a moment to recognize that the Bitcoin holders back 13 years ago were celebrating Bitcoin crossing just $1. In other news, and in another example of why we say Bitcoin and not crypto, investors sue the NBA for promoting the failed cryptocurrency exchange, Voyager. The investors are alleging that they had over $4.2 billion in losses. And extremely exciting news for everyone that holds Bitcoin in a treasury. CleanSpark became one of the first publicly traded companies to use the new FASB guidelines, which states that you can hold and mark Bitcoin at its fair market value on your balance sheet. This allowed the publicly traded miner to show significantly improved metrics. Their Bitcoin treasury had a material impact on the profitability that they were able to show last quarter. What happens when other publicly traded companies start to begin to see that Bitcoin is not a liability for your balance sheet, but an asset? All companies will benefit from these guidelines, but it'll be interesting to see which industries start to adopt Bitcoin in their treasuries first. Let's hit the capital markets real quick. The S&P 500 hits an all-time high, while the Russell 2000 has had a drawdown of over 20%. The gap in this chart is something that we've never seen before. This just goes to show how much and how heavily weighted that the S&P 500 is at the top. This probably means that some of the big stocks carrying the S&P 500 returns are set to have a drawdown and come back to the mean in the median where most of the other stocks are underperforming. Speaking of gaps, China is buying US ETFs at a premium of 43%. Could this be what's driving Bitcoin's price higher right now? We've always tried to do a good job of keeping our eye on the macroeconomic environment, both globally and here domestically. We've been looking at certain things like delinquencies and credit, and also the commercial real estate market. Let's take a second to dive in on the impact that commercial real estate defaults and delinquencies will have on regional banks specifically. When you take a second to look at the impact that commercial real estate has on large banks versus small banks, commercial real estate makes up about 7% of large bank assets, but over 30% for small banks and regional banks. Because of the Cantillon effect and the fiat system generally, Large banks have changed their business model over time, relying less and less on loans as a major source of their revenue. For those that are farthest away from the money printer, regional bank versus JP Morgan, what you have is that they are still reliant on making money by loaning to businesses and commercial real estate developers. Nearly 70% of their assets are in loans. So what happens when we start to see more contagion in the market from other regional banks, not just New York Community Bank? We believe that a major player, such as the Fed or the United States government, is going to have to step in to provide the liquidity needed in the market in order for this whole part of our economy to not collapse. And what does that mean? That means more liquidity in the market. Bitcoiner Mark Moss points out something that Stanley Druckenmiller's firm knew, because they never had a down year in over 30 years. This is what he said the secret was to understanding markets. Earnings don't move the overall market. It's the Federal Reserve Board. Focus on the central banks and focus on the movement of liquidity. Most people in the market are looking for earnings and conventional measures. It's liquidity that moves the market. And as we've said on this show time and time again, Bitcoin is the greatest absorber of global M2 liquidity. When the printer goes burr, Bitcoin goes boom. In one of Ray Dalio's famous charts, The Changing of Global Order, he believes that China will become the global economic leader and world superpower. I think that he got something wrong with this chart. I think Bitcoin will become the new global superpower, a superpower that we can all tap into. With platforms like Swan.com, you can connect a bank account and start buying Bitcoin within minutes. Let's change this red flag to an orange flag. And with that, we're signing out for today. I'm Dante Cook with Swan.com. Ride the bull, baby. Ride the bull.